What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. And it is Wednesday, February 27th, 2019, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauhana Friday. And another weekend of whatever's going to be coming our way. We have got so much to talk about today. There's just a ton of stuff happening right now. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. And Mike is in the control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. So getting right on into it here. Obviously, the big news today is finally we're having the hearings with Michael Cohen before Congress, and he is burying Donald Trump. He has clearly decided that his best chance to get some time cut off from his 3-year prison sentence, which is due to start soon, is to just help Mueller find ways to go after Trump, and Cohen is just giving the Democrats everything that they want. This is apparently their plan B. Mueller could not find any evidence of wrongdoing, so Cohen's going to come on in and say, well, I know for a fact he did this, and he did that, and he did that. And even though there's no way to prove any of it, except, of course, for the hush money payments to the girls, the Democrats are going to run with it. They're already talking articles of impeachment. And this is a circus. All we need are more clowns. Now, Cohen was Trump's personal lawyer for a little more than 10 years. And apparently in the start of 2018, they sort of, according to Cohen, had a falling out over this hush money scheme to these girls, the Stormy Daniels, the porn star, and the other one, I forget her name, the Playboy model. And Cohen wound up the subject of a federal investigation and basically wound up facing his own legal problems, for which he's now looking at time in jail. And Cohen implicated Trump under oath while pleading guilty to campaign finance violations. See, that's the Democrats' idea, that somehow paying this money to silence these two women represented a campaign finance violation. And it's not clear exactly how that works out. So he's looking at 3 years in prison, and the only way he's going to get an early release is if he can get the deep state to arrange it. So right now, Michael Cohen has become the key to taking down the Trump presidency. The Democrats know it. They can barely conceal their joy about what's going on. And I mean, everybody knows what's at stake here. Before Elijah Cummings could even finish his introductory statement, Mark Meadows tried to push through a motion to delay the hearing, claiming that Cohen broke committee rules by intentionally holding back his testimony. And basically, the Times is accusing Republicans of trying to break the flow of the hearing and voice their objections to the fact that Cohen was even allowed to appear. So it is rambunctious. I have not seen a more tense, if you will, hearing since Iran-Contra. That's how tense it's going to be. So Cohen is out there saying that Trump is a con man, that he's a racist, and they're making a big deal over the fact that he did pay a lot of money to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. And nobody raises the possibility, was Trump being the victim of blackmail here? Nobody wants to talk about that. Everybody's saying, oh, it was wrong for Trump to pay this money. Maybe he didn't have a choice. So Cohen is out there saying that Donald Trump made him do all of this. And of course, the Republicans are saying he's a liar. And Cohen has lied under oath. And in legal proceedings, if you're caught lying under oath, it's presumed everything you say after that is also a lie. But Basically, Cohen came on in with a scan of the $35,000 check signed by Donald Trump that was given to Michael Cohen, that Cohen says was reimbursement for the money Cohen paid to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. Now, we only have his word on that, because there the trail stops. But Cohen is being allowed to just go on making all kinds of personal attacks. He's not getting out there with a lot of facts. It's personal attacks. I am ashamed I chose to take part in concealing Mr. Trump's illicit acts rather than listening to my own conscience. I mean, come on, the guy's a lawyer. The first thing they teach you in law school is right and wrong don't matter. Your job is to take care of your client. Then Cohen went on to say, I'm ashamed because I know what Mr. Trump is. He's a racist, he's a conman, he's a cheat. He was a presidential candidate who knew that Roger Stone was talking with Julian Assange about a WikiLeaks drop of Democratic National Committee emails. And again, it's a statement that is not backed up by any facts. This is just accusations by a known liar. And I'm not trying to defend Donald Trump here. I'm trying to defend a process, because the process is skewed right now. So, as I said before, the Mueller report having failed to find any collusion, this is their plan B. Guilt by acclamation, guilt by accusation. Cohen is saying all the things the Democrats want to hear, and they're already talking impeachment. In fact, the progressive group By the People has put together a pledge to impeach President Trump. Democratic Representatives Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, are the first members of Congress to sign it. So it's already on the way. All right, we're going to do a shout out to all of our affiliates who are just now rejoining the network, and we're going to take a phone call from Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm a Trump supporter, and I'm enjoying the hell out of this hearing. I mean, if they're going to impeach Trump, that's the greatest. That'll be one of the best things to ever happen to him. I mean, you got Elijah Cummings. Let me give you the first five people that were speaking for the Democrats. A black man, Elijah Cummings. A Jewish woman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. A black person, Eleanor Norton from District of Columbia. A black person, Clay. And then you had a drunken Irishman from from Boston. I mean, this is all about politics, and politics is about Middle America and the independents. They're going to go after Trump. It's obviously just there's not even a criminal charge here that he any kind of crime that he's really violated.
That's true. Well, I mean, they're claiming it's a violation of campaign finance laws, but it's not exactly clear how that works out.
Yeah, and the other thing is, this guy Cohen, he's going to go to some cushy federal. Michael Savage had a thing about the prison he's going to, and because he's an Orthodox Jew, he's going to this special place. They get special food. They have live band, because they're all these rich guys, so they have these live bands come in. The prison he's going to is not a federal prison. I hope they can change that, though, because I don't, and I hope maybe there's some Italians there that don't like rats, because this guy is a serious rat. But the beauty of this is there's no deal. And this is just going to make Trump go harder at the deep state. And anytime I watch things like this, it's actually, to me, as a Trump supporter and a person that's against the deep state in this country, it's a good thing, because I don't want to see Trump make a deal and have peace with these deep state people. I want to see him go to the mattresses. I want war. I want to destroy the deep state. That's what his job is. And by them doing this kind of stuff is actually cheers me up, because it tells me that the war against the deep state and Donald Trump is still hot, and I want it to be hot until they're destroyed.
Well, I'd like to see the deep state destroyed. There's absolutely no question about it. I'm not as happy about what's going on here, mostly because the process has become perverted and distorted. And you're saying there's no crime there, and if so, there may be a minor crime. It's hard to imagine impeachment over a campaign finance violation, but it looks like the Democrats are going to do it. And they may impeach him. It'll be up to the Senate to remove him. I don't think they're going to go through that. But there is absolutely no question Donald Trump is on the defensive right now. He's in trouble. He had 2 years
I'd like
to try and get the upper hand and get those presidential brass knuckles on. But no, he's clearly on the defensive right now.
Well, I'd like to state two things. One is Feinstein and Pelosi say they're not even watching it, so that tells me that they know where this is going. The other thing is that as an instrument of exposing the deep state, exposing the Democrats, and exposing the media, this is a great plus. The only thing I don't like about this whole hearing is the timing. I would like to see more of stuff what's going on in North Korea, and also, in Hanoi, and I'd also like to see more about the potential war with India and Pakistan, which is nobody's even talking about. And they're shooting down each other's airplanes, and that's a powder keg over there.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think this is it's like the Kavanaugh hearings. It's the same thing. These Democrats, the more you can put Debbie Wasserman Schultz on TV, the better for Donald Trump, because not only does it piss off Republicans, but it pisses off all those Bernie supporters. And I have a soft place in my heart for populist leftists because I'm a populist rightist, and
okay.
I understand them.
Joe, you're missing part of the dynamic here, and that is that the vast majority of the American people are not watching the hearings. They'll be told what happened at the hearings after they get home from work tonight by the corporate media, which hates Donald Trump. And, sometimes that can make a huge difference. Do you remember back when John Kennedy and Richard Nixon had a debate when the first time Nixon ran for the White House? And people who listened to it on radio thought Nixon had won. People who watched it on TV thought Kennedy had won because Kennedy just looked better and Nixon had a terrible makeup artist. So how this is presented and how this is filtered, I think this is bad news for Trump. I'm sorry. I don't think this is a good thing. And I'm very appalled at the way the process is being perverted and turned into a political weapon, because that's not the way this is supposed to work. These hearings are supposed to be about getting to the bottom of things and getting to the facts. And they've just opened up the floor to rumor and innuendo and suspicion. And it's turned into a circus.
And the circus is a good thing as far as I'm concerned, because before what we had was a circus behind closed doors. Now to any free-thinking, intelligent person, I agree a lot of people just get spoon-fed their news, but to anybody that's an individual and a thinker, the circus is, that's what I love about Trump, the way he just exposes all this to anybody that really wants to see it. Now, there are closed-minded people and people that get their news from the establishment, but these kind of things wake people up, and that's what I totally agree with what your last point was. It's a circus, and just like the Kavanaugh hearing, it's waking people up, and I think that's the beauty of Donald Trump.
Well, I don't see it that way, because I'm watching the hearings on Fox News, and they're in that lower third banner area. They're just putting up everything Cohen is saying about how Trump is a con man and a cheat, and people are going to come in, they're going to read that. That's what's going to stick. And so I'm sorry, Trump's in trouble. I don't share your optimism here. Anyway, Joe, we're going to let you go. Thanks a lot for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Jim in Chicago. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Michael, first of all, I want to say I am not a Trump supporter. I didn't vote for the man. I knew things about him that the media did not report during the campaign. Now, what Cohen is saying might be true, but it has nothing to do as far as him being president. I cannot think of anything that Donald Trump has done where he can be impeached. Now, if they wanted to bring out some sleazy stuff, if he's cheap, he's a racist and stuff like that, they should have done it during the campaign. But I don't see any evidence where Donald Trump can be impeached, and I am not a fan of Donald Trump.
No, I'm in agreement with you. There's supposed to be a high crime or a misdemeanor, but at this point, the political attitude seems to be that the House of Representatives can impeach him just because they don't like him. And my sense, that's the direction that it's going. Right now, Donald Trump is a major threat to the globalists because he's awakened the spirit of nationalism in the American people. And that wasn't supposed to happen. His slogan, "Make America Great Again," got Americans thinking about our country and pulled us back from this, we're all one planet, one slab of cement, one private central bank kind of thinking. And that's why they want to get rid of him and get another globalist into that Oval Office just as quick as they can.
I would agree. And not only that, I don't think they wanted to criticize Donald Trump during the campaign because they all thought Hillary was going to win. So they figured, well, he might, and that's what it boils down to. And plus, the media was making so much money off of Donald Trump. They were getting money left and right every time he was on the air. They were there, and all the money. In fact, he even stated it: all the money that he was able to make for the media. But again, all this stuff that Cohen is saying is personal stuff. Nothing has Donald Trump done that has violated the Constitution or criminal. So let's leave him alone until you find something.
Well, I would agree with that. That's common sense, and that's the way it's supposed to work. Until you have proof of a high crime or misdemeanor, you cannot impeach. Unfortunately, we're dealing with a political climate in which the rules are being thrown out the window. The attitude we're seeing among the Democrats and even some Republicans now is get Trump at, no matter what it takes. And they're going to wrap it up in an impeachment to sell it to the American people that this is the way it's supposed to work, but it isn't. Again, I agree with you. What Cohen is saying, except for the thing about the checks to Stormy Daniels and McDougal, this is all personal stuff. It's smears. It's Cohen's personal opinion, and none of it's impeachable. But it's exactly what the Democrats and the corporate media want to hear. And this is what they're going to do to basically make up for the fact that when the Mueller report is finally released, there's going to be nothing there.
Right. Well, again, we're acting like a banana republic. So, well, Michael, you take care. Take care.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. And I'm not acting like a banana republic. I mean, we got some bananas growing out back there, but our government certainly is. That's the perfect term. The system is breaking down. They don't follow their own rules. They don't follow their own laws. It's just have at each other, and best person comes out on top. Now, as far as Michael Cohen, his career is over. As of yesterday, he is disbarred. And basically, a New York court ruled that Cohen's guilty plea last November automatically strips him of his eligibility to practice law. So he's not a lawyer. So even when he gets out of prison, he's got to figure out, what's he going to do? Well, he could hit the celebrity circuit. He could write a book, My Time with Donald Trump. It'll be a bestseller. And so he may be even spicing up some of his testimony in the hearing today with that intention, that somewhere down the road he's going to tease that he knows more that he isn't saying, and then he's going to try and sell a book. It's all just crooked as all heck here. And I'm very alarmed. And again, I'm disappointed in Trump. I'm not a big fan of his. And barring a sudden change of direction by the White House in the next slightly less than 2 years now, I'm not going to put the effort into supporting him in 2020 that I did in 2016. And again, to be very honest, 2016 was more about keeping Hillary out than putting Trump in. But Trump has just been a huge disappointment. And we're seeing all kinds of signs that Hillary is seriously thinking about stepping back in 2020. And I certainly hope not. I certainly hope not. Okay, getting on over to the war zones, and there are plenty of them. The Russian ambassador to the United Nations, Vasily Nebenzia, said yesterday at the UN Security Council meeting, the United States has aimed to change the regime in crisis-torn Venezuela. And the Russian envoy called on all countries at the UN Security Council to oppose military intervention in Venezuela, stressing the country's sovereignty should be respected. We got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And yes, Republic Broadcasting needs your support. Look at what's going on around the world today. The government in Washington, D.C. is tearing itself apart out of petty jealousies. You've got the nationalism versus globalism. You've got Pakistan and India starting to shoot at each other, and they've got nuclear weapons. You've got the U.S. about to start wars in Venezuela, and according to John Bolton, Nicaragua and Cuba. And you've got the corporate media trying to basically steer your mind in a direction that will convince you that you have no other choice than to support the United States government in all of this. So where are you going to get the facts and analysis to maybe allow you to come to a slightly different decision? Well, from right here, Republic Broadcasting. And we don't have, giant pharmaceutical companies sponsoring us. We don't have George Soros giving us grants. We rely on you to keep us going. And things are very tight right now. And I know they're tight for you as well. The economy is obviously slipping into a recession. But we're asking for you to just send anything that you can. There's no such thing as too small a donation. So the postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. The network thanks you. Now, Dennis Etler is an American political analyst, and he says the United States is threatening to unleash the dogs of war in Venezuela using the old imperialistic charade of defending human rights. And how many times have we heard that one before? Oh, we're bringing these people democracy. We're defending their human rights. They used that one in Iraq, and then we found out the United States forces were torturing the Iraqis to find weapons of mass destruction, which, as it turned out, never existed. It's for all you Kafka fans out there. So the United States has now imposed sanctions on 4 state governors in Venezuela as a means to try and increase pressure on Maduro for blocking the aid convoys. So they're imposing sanctions on Omar Jose Prieto, governor of the state of Zulia that borders Colombia, Ramon Alonso Carrizales, governor of the state of Apur and a former defense minister, Jorge Luis Garcia, governor of Vargas State, former head of the army, and Rafael Alejandro Lacava, governor of Carabobo State and ally of Maduro. And these sanctions coincide with Vice President Mike Pence attending a meeting of the Regional Lima Group of Nations in Bogota, Colombia. Now, that did not work out too well. Pence was counting on the Lima Group to say, yes, we're in, we're count on us. And they basically backed off and said, this has to be settled politically. Nobody wants another war there. Now, as for those aid trucks, they have now been searched, and what they found was they found some food and medicine, but there was equipment for building barricades, lumber, nails, wire. And so, yeah, this aid convoy was being used to smuggle in supplies to the opposition. And Maduro was wise to not allow it in. I'm sure Maduro's going to say, we'll allow the convoys to come in after they've been searched. Now, Max Blumenthal went on out and made another video. The last one was of a modern indoor supermarket in Caracas, and it showed plenty of food on the shelves, plenty of customers obviously buying the food, putting a lie to this humanitarian disaster that is being used to sell you yet another war. And he's come out with another video, which is currently linked to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. This is one of the outdoor markets that are quite common in Central and South America. It, too, was filled with lots and lots of food and lots of customers. These markets, by the way, are state subsidized. The government of Venezuela is spending money to keep food prices down. So this propaganda that they can't afford the food is complete nonsense. And one of the most revealing things was that Max Blumenthal was able to basically convert bolivars to dollars in his head. So as he walks around picking up items, and he's picking them up and saying, this is blah, 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 bolivars, that's about $1.25. And looking at that, you realize the Venezuelans are paying less for their food than we are here in the United States, certainly at least here in Hawaii. So all this talk about humanitarian crisis and he's an evil tyrant and conditions are terrible, it's just more of the same lies to sell you a war. How many more times are you going to have to be lied to before you stand up and say, I'm sick and tired of the lies. You guys are full of bovine excrement, and I refuse to listen to you any longer. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to take a phone call from Art off the grid. Aloha, Art. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I want to talk about what's happening down there with Maduro and all, but just real quick on the Cohen thing. Man, give a full 6 foot of rope and a 12-foot tall bridge, and he'll hang himself every time. Anyway, with Maduro and what's going on, as soon as you told me about they found stuff to build barricades and stuff, I started laughing. The American people, the vast majority of the population, attention span is about 5 minutes.
Yes.
They can't remember what happened on yesterday's episode of Dancing with the Stars, unless, of course, their favorite person won.
Yes.
Then they remember a tiny little detail. But that's the mentality of the people. I want to remind everybody, Mike, you've got a really good memory, dude. You remember back, I don't know, what was it, 5, 6 years ago, when Israel went all kinds of ballistic because people were smuggling stuff through tunnels to build various different things. I mean, they had, bans on the Gaza Strip for you couldn't have construction materials and stuff like concrete because, heaven forbid, you could build barricades.
Yes.
And the U.S. supported Israel's ban on that. But then the United States wants to turn around and send in stuff disguised as humanitarian aid to help build barricades, to help overthrow a government. Does anybody else see a double standard here, or am I just imagining things?
Well, you don't even have to look all that far for a double standard, because over in Haiti, where there is a genuine uprising against a corrupted U.S.-backed government, the U.S. is in there trying to help that government hang on to power.
It's just crazy. I mean, it's one of those, don't do as we do as we say do, and rules for thee and rules for me. And, I'm just sick and tired of this garbage. And I just wish the American people would get sick of it, too, so we could, just do what we need to do to run these clowns out and take back what is supposed to be ours. We have a Constitution for these United States of America, folks. Go prior to that, the Declaration of Independence. When any form of government becomes destructive of these means, fill in the blanks. Thanks, Mike, man. Have a great one.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. I think this next article may suggest an alternate outcome for where we are. This is coming from strategicculture.org. And the headline is Charging into Venezuela, Disastrous Overstretch for U.S. And it starts out by tongue-in-cheek suggesting that Secretary of State Pompeo, National Security Advisor John Bolton, and Special Envoy for Restoring Democracy to Venezuela, Elliot Abrams, might be agents of influence for Russia and China. And it is tongue-in-cheek, but basically the United States has overextended itself militarily around the world. We have military forces in 39% of the countries on Earth. None of these military engagements are on schedule. They've all taken way too long. We've been in Afghanistan 18 years, and they still can't get out of there. Still garrisoning Iraq, still trying to stay in Syria, using up all of the ammunition stockpiles, wearing out all the existing weapons. And, of course, the more the United States does this, then the weaker it's going to be relative to Russia and China, with the exception, of course, the nuclear arsenals, which carries its own threat here. But basically, a war in Venezuela is going to burn up not only stockpiles, but an increasing share of the defense budget. I mean, they can't keep doing this forever. Now, Guaido, the parliamentary speaker, Juan Guaido, who has declared himself interim president of Venezuela, although he never ran and he never won the election, wants to return from Colombia, where he has been meeting with Mike Pence. And he's kind of between a rock and a hard place, because he very well cannot lead the opposition against Maduro from another country. The optics on that are bad. He has to be seen there leading the opposition forces. But there is a complication in that there had been a Supreme Court ordered ban on him leaving the country, which he violated. He broke the law, and now he could be thrown in prison upon his return. And meanwhile, the U.S. is threatening even more sanctions against Caracas to compel regime change. This is such a farce here. All right, let's get over to Pakistan and India, because that is heating up. And again, this all began with a terrorist group attack in India. And India said Pakistan is actually behind this. Pakistan said, no, this was a terrorist group. They even came on out and said, hi, we're a bunch of terrorists and we did this. And there's been, there was a flight by India into Pakistan in which they claimed to bomb a terrorist camp. Pakistan has now released photos showing that the Indian pilots bombed a lot of open ground. Apparently, they were spooked by how rapidly Pakistan was able to scramble their fighter jets. And there was originally a report that Pakistan shot down 2 Indian fighter jets. It now appears that they may each have shot down one of the others. Of course, fog of war and truth is the first casualty of war. Everybody lies in war. So we don't know exactly what's going on. But India is accusing Pakistan of violating the Geneva Convention by shooting down its planes. Actually, no, it's not a violation of the Geneva Convention to shoot down planes that are dropping bombs on your country. It's demanding the safe return of the detained pilot. I don't think that's going to happen. The only place where Pakistan did violate the Geneva Convention is they briefly posted a video of the captured pilot identifying himself. And you're not supposed to do that under the Geneva Convention. But Pakistan has taken that down. So, again, it comes on down to this initial terrorist attack from a group called Jaish-e-Mohammed, or JEM. JEM's main goal is to pry Kashmir away from India, unite it with Pakistan to bring it under Sharia law, and of course to drive Western forces out of Afghanistan, which that's already starting to happen. Their other priority of JEM is to drive all Hindus and non-Muslims from the Indian subcontinent. That, I think, is a little bit overly ambitious. But these are the people who are claiming responsibility for that terror attack. And then India says, no, it's Pakistan. It's Pakistan there. All right, and let's look at the ugly far horizon here. India and Pakistan are nuclear powers. They are nuclear powers who have not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They do not allow IAEA inspection, so we don't know exactly what's going on. But it is estimated they each have between 80 and 200 nuclear warheads. This is the most likely place where a major nuclear war could break out. Now, India and Pakistan have had 4 major wars: 1947, 1965, 1971, and 1990. They also have many border skirmishes and incidents, and we are getting reports that there is conflict along that line of control. Artillery fire, things like that. So India's military is on high alert. They're standing ready for a retaliatory action, which Pakistan has promised at a time of their own choosing. And so this is going to escalate. Now, I understand that China has launched a diplomatic effort to try and get between India and Pakistan and say, let's calm down before somebody does something nuclear. And I'm hoping that China can prevail in this, but apparently anticipating a Pakistani reaction to the Balakot bombing, Delhi, Mumbai, and 5 other cities in India have been put on high alert. So this is deadly, deadly serious. And Claire was just commenting to me before the radio show, we're hearing a lot of training flights out this window here. So everybody's winding up for something to happen somewhere. Alrighty, Russian President Putin is holding a meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Moscow. They're going to talk about a wide range of issues. The visit was originally scheduled for the 21st of February, but was postponed at the request of Israel. And apparently one of the things they're going to discuss is the Syrian conflict resolution, along with bilateral cooperation, economic and humanitarian spheres, as well as exchanging views on the current situation in the Middle East, including problems of Palestinian Israeli settlement and the situation in Syria. This is from the Kremlin here. Now, a lot of people are still scratching their head and wondering what the heck is going on, because Benjamin Netanyahu has basically merged his own party with the Otzma Yehudit, which stands for Jewish Power. And former member of the Knesset, Michael Ben-Ari, who heads Otzma, could return to the Knesset, thanks to this union with Jewish Home. And he's got ties to non-governmental organizations linked to Mir Kahane's Kach movement, outlawed in Israel and on U.S. Treasury and State Department blacklist. And some of these non-governmental organizations get their funding from Jews in the United States of America. So Netanyahu, I know politics makes for strange bedfellows, but Netanyahu has just gone out to the most rabidly racist and radical part of the political spectrum in his bid to hang on to power. And he may have stepped too far, because there's an interesting article in Ynet News saying that Netanyahu has underestimated the revulsion felt by United States Jews towards the Kahanists, and that may provoke a backlash. So we'll see what happens there. All right, Kushner is touring the Gulf right now. He's trying to build Mideast support for this deal of the century. And so he's got this U.S. peace plan for the Middle East, saying it will address final state status for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. During a visit to the Gulf Arab states, Kushner made no specific mention of a Palestinian state in an interview broadcast on Sky News Arabia. He said, however, that the long-awaited peace proposal would build on a lot of efforts in the past, including the 1990 Oslo Accords that provided a foundation for Palestinian statehood. Kushner is saying this deal will require concessions from both sides. Now, this sounds a lot softer than early reports, which had this deal of the century relative to Israel and Palestine as totally one-sided. And maybe somebody finally realized that a total giveaway to Israel was never going to win the approval of the Palestinians, so there had to be something. It remains to be seen what the details are going to be. Meanwhile, Israeli forces have detained the Palestinian governor of Jerusalem, Adnan Gaith, after raiding his home in the Silwan neighborhood. And apparently, Israeli intelligence and special forces raided this guy's home, transferred him to the Russian Compound Police Center. Now, this is not the first time they've detained him. He's been detained several times before, as recently as last November. And they have banned him from entering the West Bank for 6 months and for traveling outside Palestine. So he's under Palestine arrest here. Once again, and this is getting to be a daily occurrence, Israeli Minister of Agriculture Uri Ariel has stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound under the protection of armed Israeli forces. And they're just going to keep on doing this until they get a response. And then they can say, oh, we're the victims, we're the victims, we're the victims. Apparently, there were night protests along the Gaza border, and 4 Palestinians were injured by Israeli forces. This is coming from the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Now, the other day we were talking about this little kerfuffle over in Spain, where there was this Spanish company that is a builder of rail transportation, had hit a snag in that its workers were refusing to work on a contract to build a light rail system in the West Bank that would basically fly over the heads of the Palestinians while linking the illegal settlements together. And the Spanish employees of this company said, no, we're not going to do that. Well, apparently up in Canada, there's a company called Bombardier, and it is an aerospace and rail transportation giant. It's a global corporation with more than 65,000 employees in 28 countries. They're going to go ahead and build this light rail system for Israel, which happens to be a violation of international law, because it's a violation of international law to participate in settler colony projects that dispossess indigenous people. But apparently they're going to do it anyway. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, by the way, like where I'm living, we've already got more than a half a foot of snow. That's your global warming.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's precipitation, but it's still cold.
Yes.
Anyway, we're talking about Israel and Palestine and what's going on over there. I don't know whether you've looked at Google Maps lately, but they just wiped Palestine off the face of the map.
Yes.
Now West Bank is Gaza, right? And They don't even show the old armistice lines and all that jazz. I mean, come on. You can't wipe out history. It's impossible.
Well, what's really interesting? Google Maps and Google Earth actually have an API where you can add in details to the map yourself and make them publicly available. And apparently somebody tried to do an overlay of Israel showing those old treaty lines and the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and Google deleted it.
Yep. Well, who's the head of Google?
Zuckerberg. No, he's Facebook.
Google? I thought it was Schmidt.
It's Schmidt. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, I know it's hard. It's hard to keep all of these big corporations, lined up. Could you hold me over, Mike?
Yeah, I'm going to hold you over. Stay on the line. We'll be right back.
Okay.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And if you are going to take advantage of Extendovite's Heart Drop sale, you have to place your order today or tomorrow, because Friday is March 1st and the sale will be over. So you got to move fast in that. Okay, we're talking with Al in Canada, and we're talking about the situation in Palestine, and it's very grim. What's going on over there, and I'm still very concerned about this so-called deal of the century that Kushner's pushing for, because it's kind of like a whole bunch of wolves making a peace deal with the lamb. Anyway, what's your thought?
Well, my thoughts, Mike, are just it's absolute censorship. We're like mushrooms. We're in the dark. We don't really know what's going on, and the proof of that is to actually go into Google Map and try and focus right in on Palestine. You can't do it. They won't allow you to, but you can go right into Moscow, right under the street, and start walking around.
Yep.
Street views. So You know, I mean, as soon as you see something like that.
I need to back up here a little bit. First of all, Street View has not gone around the entire globe. There's still a lot of places that they haven't covered. And during the commercial break, I did go into both Google Maps and Google Earth, and the Gaza Strip and the West Bank are still outlined. So maybe they got a lot of complaints from people and they put them back up, but they are there as of right now.
Yeah, but you're right. But they don't really show you what's actually going on, like those colored maps do, where basically they're going in and they're bulldozing a huge area, and it's like beat it, get out, and then these quote unquote settlers come in and set up shop.
Well,
and also
no, they don't. But you need to understand. Hang on a second. Google Earth is not an intelligence tool. The photos that they are using are in many cases years old and outdated. And believe it or not, there's actually a U.S. law that requires Google to intentionally blur images showing any part of Israel.
Of course. What about the West Bank and Gaza?
Well, that's considered part of Israel in this context.
Oh. Okay, so there you go. So you can't actually go in close enough where you can see the devastation.
No,
right?
You can't. No, you can't.
No, I figured. Anyway, just to jump away from that, because we know what's going on over there. It doesn't take a genius to figure it out. I mean, that whole thing, you tell a lie big enough and long enough, pretty soon everybody will believe it.
Well, I think that's now working in reverse, because the big lie that Israel hides behind to justify their apartheid has been told so often and so loud, we're all getting sick and tired of hearing it. And I think it's starting to fall apart. Anyway, Al, got to let you go. Got to take a break for station identification. We will be right back. Michael Cohen is resumed. It is rancorous, to say the least. People are shooting dirty looks at each other from both sides of the room. And it is a circus. And here's something that you need to understand, and I mentioned this before. Lawyers aren't supposed to think right and wrong. They're taught that, literally in law school. You are not here to decide if your client is a good person or a bad person. Probably they're a bad person, or they wouldn't need a lawyer. Your job is to do the best you can for your client. The other thing, of course, is lawyer-client confidentiality. Even if he hadn't been disbarred, Cohen's career was going to be over. So we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, getting on back to the war zones here. According to the story in Anti-War, Al-Qaeda is claimed to have increased their control over Syria's Idlib province. And so while Turkey controls some of the northern Aleppo province, Idlib is now almost entirely under the control of Al-Qaeda, and they're ruling under an increasingly strict Islamist rule. So there's probably going to be a fight over there. Now, Damascus keeps finding these huge caches of U.S. and Israeli-made weapons, and they found one close to the Golan Heights. The Syrian army discovered an underground militant cache close to the border with the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights to the west of Jibhat al-Khashab in Quneitra province. And Syrian state news said that they discovered in a dugout den during the course of a combing operation with the help of locals. They found anti-tank missiles, mortars, rifles, machine guns produced in the U.S., Israel, and Jordan, as well as huge amounts of ammunition. Apart from the weaponry, the Syrian army found protective gear. I wonder if they mean chemical weapon protective gear. Satellite communication devices and medical equipment, also made in the U.S. and Israel. They also found 8 tons of C4 explosive. Now, C4 is a very powerful plastic explosive. It is 1 kilogram of C4 is equivalent to 10 kilograms of TNT. So what they found was the equivalent of 80 tons of TNT. That's enough to take out a city, small city. So many of U.S. weapons have been found in the hands of terrorist groups that a bipartisan group of lawmakers is now demanding answers from the Trump administration about reports that Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates may have transferred American-made weapons to al-Qaeda-linked extremist groups in Yemen. That's only part of the problem, of course. This is led by House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Eliot Engel, who's a Democrat. The lawmakers called on the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Acting Defense Secretary Shanahan to hold an urgent briefing on details of the suspected arms transfer. So I'm not sure why they're picking just on Saudi Arabia, but there's clearly an agenda at work there. In fact, let's be honest, nothing in Washington, D.C. happens without some underlying agenda. Now, here's an interesting little story, and this is coming out of Sana. And it's basically saying that there have been reports in the Syrian Al Jazeera area about a gold deal between the United States and the ISIS terrorist organization. And apparently they now have confirmation on the story. And the story is basically that Washington gets tens of tons of gold that ISIS has stolen as they traveled across Syria in exchange for providing safe passage for the terrorists and their leaders from the areas in Deir ez-Zor where they are located. And of course, we have reported previously on seeing heavy lift helicopters and other aircraft clearly evacuating the ISIS leadership from those areas. And now we know it wasn't just out of the goodness of their hearts that basically the U.S. cut itself in for a piece of the action, for some of the booty, some of the plunder, grab the gold. Russia and Syria continue to urge the United States to withdraw their troops from Syria and to allow for the evacuation of refugees in Rukban. And the joint statement basically said, we call on the United States, whose military units are on Syrian territory illegally, to leave the country. And that's absolutely accurate. The United States has no legal right to be there. There has been no declaration of war by Congress. The stated purpose of the United States most recently was to get rid of ISIS. They're all but gone. And the United States has no legitimate legal right under international law to remain. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Speaking of Syria, Iran has agreed to build 200,000 housing units in the Syrian capital of Damascus. And it's one of a number of agreements on civil construction, tourism, and the agricultural industry. And the building project is likely to start within the next 3 months, pointing out that Rabar said the Syrian regime prefers Iranian companies and contractors to reconstruct the war-torn country. Well, this is a poke in the eye at the United States, because part of the way the United States makes money off of a war is they'll go in and bomb a place like Iraq, and when the war is over, then they'll offer to generously loan Iraq the money for reconstruction and then provide American companies and contractors to carry out the reconstruction. That's the back-end deal on war. Now, it doesn't really work out all that well. Some of the reconstruction the U.S. did in Iraq didn't hold up, was very shoddy. It's just all about getting that money back and keeping Iraq under control with debt here. But Syria has decided they don't want any U.S. contractors. In fact, I don't think they want anybody from the United States in their country for a long while, other than diplomatic personnel. So they're going to go with Iran. And that gives Iran a legitimate reason to be in Syria, which means if Israel tries to attack them, that is an act of war. And of course, we're still seeing all the signs that the United States and Israel are looking for some kind of a pretext to attack Iran. That recent conference in Warsaw had that objective. It was clearly expressed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but it failed to rally European and Middle Eastern states to support the cause. You don't suppose that all these countries are just tired of all these wars? It's been going on for so long. This U.S. war agenda has gone on longer than World War I and World War II put together. And I think everybody's pretty much sick and tired of it. And the message coming out of Europe is that the U.S. should continue to go along with the P5+1 deal to avoid a major war and prevent nuclear weapons proliferation. Over in Turkey, the purchase of Russia's S-400 missile defense system is a done deal. This was announced by Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu, despite Washington's efforts to persuade Turkey to buy the U.S. Patriot system instead. Well, Turkey obviously wants the most bang for its buck, and right now the world knows U.S. weapons are the most expensive and not always the best. The U.S. was threatening Turkey with sanctions and also made the argument that Patriot is designed to interlink with other U.S. weapon systems. So once you buy the Patriot, there's all that goes with this, where you get all the other little pieces, and then you get this entire integrated battle management system that unfortunately has a bad habit of shooting down civilian passenger planes. Over in Libya, things are cranking up there again. Field Marshal Khalifa Haftar's self-styled Libyan National Army is being accused of war crimes and violent abuses in Libya's south after fresh gains in the area, including a much-coveted oil field. Now, the Libyan National Army is trying to take control over the oil-rich south. It's fighting on behalf of an Eastern-based government, one or two rival administrations. There's kind of an interesting phrase here. So Libya's in trouble here. Now, Ukraine, interesting developments are taking place there. The leader of Ukraine's Batkivshnya party, the opposition, we'll just say the opposition, and presidential contender Yulia Tymoshenko has initiated impeachment proceedings against President Petro Poroshenko. And she's said, "We declare that we are beginning impeachment proceedings against the president along with other factions that support us." So it looks like Poroshenko may be getting his little pink slip. And it turns out that U.S. soldiers are now in the Donbass, adding to tensions along the line of demarcation. Now, over at the Faithful Cossacks International Public Organization, Alexei Selivanov is saying that NATO countries intend to turn Ukraine into a platform for sabotage warfare. And according to him, American intelligence officers arrived in the area where the combined forces are operating in the Donbass to audit and analyze the weapons brought from the United States. And they decided to do this because there's massive corruption among the Ukrainian military, and apparently the Americans were not satisfied with what they saw, meaning that a lot of that equipment has been pilfered and resold. Okay. Article coming out of Zero Hedge, and it's talking about the final steps of the multipolar revolution. We used to be a multipolar world, then we were bipolar, U.S. and Soviet Union, then we were unipolar, United States. Now it's going back to multipolar, which I think is a good thing. But this article is calling for the containment of the United States in Europe, because right now the United States walks all over Europe like they're in charge, even though it's supposed to be Brussels. But for the last 3 decades, the United States has brought nothing but chaos and destruction to large parts of Europe, in spite of the common myth that the old continent has basked in the post-World War II peace of the American-led world order. and that chaos and destruction. There's actually a very funny story somebody wrote about sending Godzilla into Venezuela. And it's actually a satire on U.S. foreign policy. Because every time the United States says there's a problem, well, we're going to send in Godzilla, who tromps all over and kills people with his atomic heat beam, and then leaves. And this article is a theoretical discussion between two people about Venezuela, where one of them is saying it's time to send in Godzilla, and the other one's saying, look, every time Godzilla goes in, it's a mess. And the other guy says, but this time it'll be different. I promise it's going to be different here. We've got to save them, their democracy and human rights and blah, blah, blah. So it's a bit of a giggle and worth reading. Over in Hanoi, Vietnam, President Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un have finally met. They had a dinner. They discussed a few issues. Trump said it was a constructive dialogue, and when they get up tomorrow morning, they're going to get into it for real. And admittedly, there's been very little progress in negotiating an end to North Korea's nuclear program since the first summit. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of progress this time either. And I don't think Trump thinks there's going to be a lot of progress because of the way the other day he was saying he's not in a rush. He knows denuclearization will happen eventually. It doesn't have to happen right now, which is Trump's way of backing off so that he doesn't look bad when it doesn't happen. But again, Kim Jong-un would be an idiot to give up his nuclear arsenal now that he's succeeded in building one. Kim Jong-un is not going to attack anybody with a nuclear arsenal. Nobody attacks with a nuclear arsenal in this day and age. The nuclear arsenal is there for deterrence. It's a last resort to keep people from making war on your country. Unfortunately, when both sides are nuclear armed like Pakistan and India, all bets are off. But Kim Jong-un built those missiles and those nuclear bombs so that he would not be invaded. And he's not going to give those nuclear weapons up. I'll tell you that right now. Down in South Korea, one of their officials, a top security advisor to Moon Jae-in, said this tentative Trump-Kim pact is a bad deal for the United States because of the fact that Kim Jong-un is not going to decommission his nuclear fuel processing plant. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call. Anthony in Tucson, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello. You made a comment about the United States declaring war. When the Jewish lobby took over this country, as Netanyahu said, the United States isn't going to do anything about it because they know we run the country. They dissolved the War Department, and we only have a Defense Department to defend Israel's programs. And then they did away with the 13th Amendment, which prohibited lawyers from having a title of nobility in this country.
Well, it prohibited everybody from having titles of nobility in this country.
Right, and they've granted a title of nobility to the Federal Reserve Bank because they're allowed to operate their business without being required to file an income tax return or that you could audit them. And then they devalued the Federal Reserve note since 1968, 2,400%. They devalued the $20 gold piece 6,000%. They devalued the silver, which is supposed to be like $47 an ounce, and they're still trying to force people to pay only $16 for it. Then they've established a religion because the Constitution says we cannot establish a religion, and Israel claims to be God's chosen people, and we're giving billions of dollars establishing a religion in Israel. And then the other one
that's actually a valid argument that you're making there. With Israel having formally declared itself a Jewish state, right. the United States is now showing favor to an establishment of religion. That actually is a valid point.
And then they violate the 14th, 5th Amendment, which says you're supposed to be secure in your house, person, papers, and effects when they demand that you tell them what your name is, who you work for, how much you get, who you give it to, where you put it, and how much you got left. These are all in violation of the Constitution, and every judge, every congressman, every senator is acting in treason because they know this, and they're supporting the cartel, which is a criminal. I wouldn't even call it mafia. I would call it Mossad. Mossad is worse than the Italian mafia.
Well, I don't want to make this all about Israel, okay, because there's plenty of corrupting influences in this country that are native born. And I think, first of all, it's clear that we're living in a post-Constitution nation. We all respect the Constitution. We know what it says. Clearly, our government is ignoring it. Certainly, with all this constant surveillance is a violation of our Fourth Amendment rights. Remember what George W. Bush said, the Constitution is just a blankety-blank piece of paper. They'd all like to shred it up.
Yeah.
You know, they're trying to bring about a very different system in which they get to rule us and we don't get to talk back to them because they're tired of listening to us whine and cry and everything. Anyway, Anthony, we got to let you go here. We got to take another break for commercials. And we'll be
had another
right.
comment.
No, we got to let you go. Thank you for the phone call. Bye-bye. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here and getting on back to Korea. It's kind of interesting to see the reaction of Democrats to Trump's summit with Kim Jong-un. It's, of course, entirely negative. They don't want Trump to have any kind of a victory at all for any of this. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just, I can also mention Korea as well, but this country is so completely dysfunctional that what peace in Korea is a great thing for the whole world, but the Democrats are against it because of Trump. But there was a vote yesterday, and it was on whatreallyhappened.com. He ran an article about it, where the senator in Congress said that Trump's calling the border a national emergency. They passed a bill or something that says that he can't do that.
Yeah, they did, and it looks like all they need is one more GOP senator to flip, and the Senate will pass their version as well. Of course, Trump can veto it at that point, but I'm not even sure if it's legitimate for the Congress to go on in and tell Trump he can't declare a national emergency. That violates the separation of powers doctrine.
I agree with you completely, Mike, but in a conversation I had with a good friend of mine yesterday who, my take on it is this is the end of the country for good. If you take everything together, for instance, they're making peace in Korea a political thing. They're making we're about to invade Venezuela and create another several million refugees and waves of people assaulting our southern border. We haven't declared a war, even though we've been at war forever since 1941. And yesterday also, the military came out and says, well, the border doesn't rise to what we would consider a defense problem.
Well, it's not their call to make. It's not their call to make. And this guy needs to go back and review that oath that they take when they become officers, which says, I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the other officers above me.
Right, as well as supporting the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I took
That's
that
true.
out.
Yes.
But Mike, what I'm saying here is that even despite all that, the military is weighing in as part of the deep state on not sending people to the border when that's their job. Their job is to defend the territorial integrity of the United States. Yet we can send people to Venezuela. We can send them to Libya. We just can't send them to our own border.
Well, you bring up a point with Venezuela. I mean, this guy at the Pentagon is saying there's no military threat at the southern borders. There's about to be one. We're starting a war with Venezuela. If John Bolton has his way, we're going to start wars with Nicaragua and Cuba. And obviously, with the borders wide open, the Venezuelan military and the Nicaraguan military and the Cuban military are going to be thinking, hey, we just need to sneak some people through, and commit some major sabotage at military bases, because after all, these people will blend right in with those migrant hordes the Democrats are bringing in to vote Democratic.
And Mike, it's if you look, I live in California, obviously, and I live in a sanctuary city and a sanctuary state. Here we have all of our representatives here, our senators, our congressmen, they're all completely reprehensible, by the way.
Yes.
But at any rate, they had a chance to vote on all the laws for immigration and citizenship, and they had their chance. And however they voted, they lost, and they're not going along with it. Right? They won't go along with it. So we have cities and states not obeying the Constitution. We have the Army telling us that the territorial integrity of the United States isn't a defense problem. We have the Democrats saying peace in Korea is a bad idea because Trump's doing it. This country, it's the end. If they can tell Trump that he can't declare an emergency over the border, I said yesterday to my friend, you can mark this day as the day that it officially, the United States, became terminal. It's absolutely terminal now. There's no getting around it. If we don't have the political will to do something about all this going on. Oh, by the way, I do work for LA Unified. I was at LA Unified today, and some of the teachers were saying the whooping cough is back inside LA Unified school system. And about half an hour before I heard that conversation, my daughter goes to a private school, and her private school, it's a horribly expensive private school, whooping cough is there. And the teachers were saying, well, didn't we defeat this? And yeah, we did. But we're at the point
and
right
then we
now,
just invited it back in over that border. Anyway, Peter, we got to take a break for commercials here. Thank you for the phone call, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And interestingly enough, nearly 24 Democratic members in the House of Representatives have introduced a resolution calling for a formal end to the Korean War, which has been technically ongoing since 1950. Now, it's obviously been quiet for much of that time. The measure also allows for the continued stationing of U.S. forces in South Korea, which I think would be up to the South Korean government to decide, not Congress. But still, it is time to formally end the Korean War. I think it's something Kim Jong-un would certainly welcome. I think Moon Jae-in would welcome it. It would certainly look very good for Donald Trump to do it, which is why I'm surprised the Democrats are behind this. But the House Armed Services Committee member Ro Khanna said that President Trump must not squander this rare chance for peace. He should work hand in hand with our ally, South Korean President Moon Jae-in, to bring the war to a close and advance toward the denuclearization of the peninsula. Now, ending the war formally, I think, would in fact be seen as a serious gesture by North Korea, because the impasse we've had up to this point is, following the first summit, North Korea did a lot of stuff. They made, they returned the remains of American soldiers who had been lost in North Korea. They opened up the border and allowed people who had families who'd been split by the Korean War to finally meet each other again. They were talking about tearing down that whole DMZ. They stopped all that loudspeaker nonsense. He closed down the nuclear test site, dismantled a rocket test stand, and now he's waiting for the United States to show something in good faith. This would be it. I think Kim Jong-un would see this as an indication of seriousness on the part of Trump, if not on the U.S. government itself here. Now, Over in Russia, they have a defense contractor, Kalashnikov Concern, which is named after one of the most famous small arms designers of all time, obviously creator of the AK series of rifles. They're now producing what are described as kamikaze drones designed to destroy remote ground targets. And it's called the Kubla, was showcased for the first time at the International Exhibition of Arms and Military Equipment in Abu Dhabi. And the drone delivers an explosive charge onto the coordinates of the target, which can be set manually or can be acquired automatically by uploading an image of the target into the guidance system. Now that's pretty intense. It's got a synthetic vision system that can recognize its target. So the drone carries a 3-kilogram payload. It has an endurance time of 30 minutes and a rate of between 80 and 130 kilometers per hour speed. So Kalashnikov says the advantage of the system are hidden launch, high accuracy of the shot, noiselessness, and ease of handling. And apparently it's already been tested out in Syria. That was the news that came on out of this thing. Okay, according to a new report out of the Pentagon, the U.S. Navy is planning to retire the USS Truman aircraft carrier 25 years ahead of schedule. Now, the Pentagon is trying to get 2 new Ford-class carriers, even though the lead ship in that class hasn't worked out all that well. And the costs are starting to get to them. So they're going to slash the U.S. carrier fleet from 11 carriers now down to 10. And that would basically ratchet the carrier fleet down by 9%. Now, this is not going to happen, they say, until 2024. But it's another reminder, things are getting a little tight over there in Pentagon land, despite all the money that they've got. And a lot of it has to do with waste and lost and outright graft and corruption. But these carriers represent a huge investment, and it's not working out. If they're ending the Truman's commission 25 years early, it tells me that part of the problem is it's wearing out. It's turning into a rust bucket. Okay, now as one of our callers mentioned, we're turning to domestic politics now. One of our callers mentioned the U.S. House passed the resolution nullifying Trump's national emergency. The vote was 245 to 182. And it was to revoke Donald Trump's emergency declaration. The measure now heads to the Senate for consideration, where apparently it is just one GOP senator shy of passing, which would lead to a veto. Now, here is where things get a little fuzzy. When, well, let me just go on with this thing. By declaring a national emergency, it's not quite the same thing as an executive order. Now, executive order, which is entered into the Federal Register, Congress does have 30 days to call that off. But a declaration of a national emergency, I think, is outside of that. This could provoke a constitutional crisis. Trump could easily veto it. Whether Congress could come up with a veto override, I know the House would like to do that, would be another embarrassment for Donald Trump. But again, you have to wonder, what are these people in Congress thinking? The United States is starting a war in Venezuela, and according to Bolton, Nicaragua and Cuba. Those wars are not on the other side of the planet. They are in what Washington, D.C. likes to call our backyard. Keeping that border open is an invitation to unconventional warfare conducted on our own soil. Now, the latest word we're getting from Russia is that the United States is going to take the Syria approach with Venezuela. They're going to smuggle arms and weapons in to opposition groups, and apparently they're getting the arms and weapons from a company up in Ukraine. So they're untraceable. But everybody knows who's behind all of this. And the Venezuelans are going to know who's behind all of this. It's insane. Colorado is set to become the 12th state to move against, to try and kill the Electoral College in favor of nationwide popular voting for the next presidential election. And this is all coming from the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. They've got 12 states on there. And here is the problem, though. The states can't just arbitrarily abandon our constitutional election system, but it looks like that's exactly what they're going to do. And again, this is coming from the Democrats. So this organization represents states that have agreed to pool their presidential electoral votes for the majority candidate, regardless of individual state outcomes. So here is the way they're going to get around the Constitution. All the states that join this organization have agreed that whoever wins the popular vote will get all of their electoral votes. This is Hillary Clinton all over again. This has got Hillary Clinton's fingerprints all over it. She hates that Electoral College. And I take this as another sign that she is, in fact, thinking of stepping back in 2020. Just utterly insane. Flooding the country with illegal immigrants to vote Democratic, even though they're not supposed to vote. Trump is doing nothing about it. We have an election system which itself is designed to facilitate and conceal election fraud. Trump isn't doing anything about that. And now you have this attempt to basically hamstring the Electoral College, and nothing's going to get done about that. Trump is a one-term president. Get used to the idea. All you Trump supporters out there, this is his one term in office. All right, we are still hearing the repercussions of the Jussie Smollett hoax. And it's amazing to see people are still out there trying to spin this as a positive. And the police are basically saying that, you know, through regular police work, they discovered it had been set up. Smollett paid these two Nigerian bodybuilders $3,500 to do this. The rope they chose to put around his neck was non-chafing. That was kind. The bleach was environmentally friendly. And it's just silly here. So Maxine Waters expressed her disappointment that the attack might have been staged, but said that his highly credible story reflects a deeper reality. The fact is that President Trump is a racist, and there are doubtless many Trump supporters who would have enjoyed beating up a gay black man. I think Jussie deserves some credit for trying to dramatize this deeper reality. She's been taking her lead from the Israelis. Every time one of these Holocaust hoaxes is exposed, like fragments, the first thing they say is, oh, well, maybe it was less than truthful, but it illustrates the deeper truth, and so we ought to have more respect for this art. I mean, it's a big steaming pile of bovine excrement here. Kamala Harris came on out saying, I'm sad, frustrated, and disappointed that this particular incident seems to have been a hoax. However, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that real attacks of this sort do take place. Jussie's efforts to draw attention to this fact were well intended. No, they won't. He was trying to get his name in the papers so he could get more money from his TV role. Smollett is now claiming that the scheme was essentially a dry run for a subplot segment of a future episode of Empire. And judging from the initial responses, I'd say I'd have to be demonstrated. I'm more than just an actor. The verisimilitude of my vignette shows my screenwriting ability is considerable and supports my case for a bigger slice of the Empire pie. So that's it. The guy's a liar, but he told the lie that we wanted told, and therefore we're going to support him. All righty. So, January 29th, two masked men identifying themselves as Donald Trump supporters, shouting racial and homophobic insults, attacked Jussie Smollett, lightly bashed his face, lightly punched his ribs, splashed him with environmentally friendly bleach, and put a noose of non-irritating rope around his neck. Smollett's story was gobbled up hook, line, and sinker by the anti-Trump news media, but it turned out to be a hoax. And this type of hoax is part and parcel of the left's broad agenda of victimology, fraudulence, and gimmickry, plus gross media gullibility. Now, here's what's really interesting. Ever since this came on out, that it was a hoax, nobody has apologized to Donald Trump or Trump supporters for smearing them. Not one word of apology. Ellen Page wrote a new op-ed about Jussie Smollett and hate crimes, but made no mention of apologizing to Mike Pence, because she blamed the hate crime on Mike Pence. It's amazing. We have been talking about this sudden rush to transfer nuclear power technology to Saudi Arabia. And apparently it's not sitting well with a lot of people, partly because Saudi Arabia was a financial backer of Donald Trump, partly with Israel that doesn't want any more nuclear cooperation than it already has from Iran. And so the House Committee on Oversight and Reform has announced they'll be probing Trump administration allies and their push to have the U.S. government share nuclear power technology with Saudi Arabia. And the committee's report explained how an organization called IP3 International developed a plan for U.S. companies to build nuclear power plants in Saudi Arabia, calling it the Middle East Marshall Plan. The report alleges Michael Flynn, while he was National Security Advisor to Trump's presidential campaign and transition, and Thomas Barrack, chairman of the Trump Inaugural Committee and friend to the president, were proponents of the IP3 plan since at least summer of 2015 and into the time Flynn was a White House advisor. And whistleblowers to the House Committee are concerned that the plans would violate U.S. law. Now, since early 2018, Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Energy, Industry, and Natural Resources has employed 2 United States firms to provide advice and assistance concerning a potential bilateral agreement with the United States concerning peaceful uses of nuclear energy. Well, all they need to do is sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty. There are still additional lines down there at the bottom. They do that, and everything is just perfectly copacetic. Okay, this is getting kind of dark here. There are these 2 wealthy Ecuadorian brothers, Roberto and William Aiea. They were owners of companies fined and ordered to shut down for illegally trafficking worldwide aborted baby parts purchased from Planned Parenthood. They are now under arrest because they were in this country illegally. And now, of course, we have these ridiculous late-term abortion laws where they can literally kill the baby after it's born. That's more source material for this black market trade. And I don't know what people are trafficking baby parts for, but apparently somebody somewhere wants them. And they're willing to pay for them here. Now, as you know, there was an effort in the Congress to reverse these late-term abortion bills. And it was a Republican bill that would have threatened prison time for doctors who don't try to save the life of infants who are born alive during failed abortions. And the Democrats helped vote it down. It failed 7 votes short of the 60 needed because of the Democrats. And can you see the hypocrisy? Down on the southern border, oh, what a tragedy. Those poor immigrant and refugee children, we have to take care of them. And up in New York, nah, we don't want it. Throw it in the trash. That's how completely dysfunctional the Democratic agenda has become. It's amazingly. Meanwhile, a Maryland Democratic lawmaker has been forced to apologize after, in private, referring to a county as a blank district, and blank was the N-word. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And somebody just sent me this video clip from Fox News from 2016 in which they are reporting that Saudi Arabia already has nuclear weapons. So I think this new investigation is more about hurting Donald Trump than getting at Saudi Arabia. They really hate him. The globalists want him gone. I never thought I would live to the day to see our entire government so hate the president. I mean, the hate there is even worse than it was for John F. Kennedy. And I think probably the only reason they haven't taken that approach with Trump is they know we in the independent media are all watching. And the American people aren't going to buy crazed lone assassin again. Article out of Redress Online talking about why politics is dead. And it says because the two political parties, the two sides, the right and left, are just shells of what they used to be. They're devoid of ideological and political relevance. They're just out there selling themselves with cult-like identity politics. The left is basically all about LGBT, and the right is basically about money. Both parties are quintessentially tribal, anti-universal, and they're not attractive to most people, and that hits it right on the head. I think Americans are fed up with both of these parties. Unfortunately, the system is rigged to prevent a third party from getting anywhere in the system, which is why Bernie Sanders is going to run as a Democrat in 2020. Okay, talking about the economic news, all Globex futures trading was halted, and this was reported by Bloomberg. CME spokesperson Gang Li Meng said, "We are aware of this and we're currently looking into this." And S&P futures have stopped. The foreign exchange markets remain active. Gregory Manarino over at TraderChoice.net says that he thinks these futures markets were shut down because of India and Pakistan starting to shoot at each other, fearing that there might be too much volatility. And once again, people are sounding the alarm over the fact that Americans are defaulting on their student loans at record levels. It's another bubble. The country has never been as indebted with student loans as it is now, and the problem is spiraling out of control. In just the third and fourth quarters of last year, there were around $166 billion in student loan delinquencies that have been in default for 90 days or more. College has become a scam, like everything else in this country. We've got to take a break for station identification. We will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're talking about the economic news, and we're talking about this out-of-control problem with student loan debts going into default. And it is a major problem. It's certainly a problem for those financial institutions who overextended. It's certainly a problem for these kids. They got suckered. They got played. They were lured into signing up for college with the promise they were going to get a college degree, was going to guarantee a high-paying job, and they pay off the student loans very quickly. And it just didn't work out because the high-paying jobs just aren't there anymore. And college these days is less about education and more about indoctrination with courses on, white privilege and LGBTQ whatever, and how to tell the correct restroom and so forth. How many art history majors can one country absorb? And so these kids go through the college, they graduate, they're in debt, they're trying to make the payments on the student loans. Some of them are having to stay living with their parents. They got scammed. There's no other word for it. They got scammed. Now, another area in which costs are out of control, of course, is medical bills. The United States has the most expensive medical care on earth, and it ranks somewhere like 38th in quality, I think. And about 400,000 to 500,000 Americans die every year from medical mistakes, which is what you get for all that money here. Medical bills right now are behind 2/3 of all U.S. bankruptcies. So that is completely out of control. The father of Reaganomics, David Stockman, told Fox Business's Neil Cavuto, investors ought to be getting out of the market and get back to cold hard cash. It's time to wake up and smell the roses here. Now, the markets were down a little bit today, but at some point, the ability to keep it propped up, they're going to run out. Yes, I know they've got the printing presses and they can just keep printing up more money. But he's out there saying we've had 10 years of the longest business expansion in history. We're increasing the deficit at the very wrong time. They say it's $900 billion this year. It'll be $1.2 trillion of borrowing at the same time. The Fed is trying to shrink its balance sheet, which means they'll be dumping bonds onto the market. Okay, smart people are getting into metals, and apparently demand for silver coins surged in February. The U.S. Mint has suspended silver bullion coin sales after the sales doubled in February, which is a polite way of saying they ran out. So apparently they sold 775,000 ounces, and the Mint issued a temporary suspension of sales until inventories can be restocked. So that's a good sign. Nice to always have a bunch of silver on hand here. Okay, apparently we're looking at some data coming out of Wall Street. This may be the reason the markets were down today. The worst restaurant data in 25 years, worst retail sales in 10 years, housing sales are down, auto loan delinquencies at a 10-year high. And apparently we're beginning to see a lot of CEOs choosing to leave their jobs, take early retirement, go do something else here. Okay. Getting into immigration here. Apparently down in Texas, I mean, if you think about Trump's national emergency declaration to build the border wall, it's going to affect Texas more than any other state because they've got the longest border with Mexico. And apparently, according to this poll, 3 in 5 Texas voters disapprove of Trump using his emergency executive powers to fund a wall. This is coming from Quinnipiac University. And I've had issues with some of their polls in the past here. And a little more than half of voters said they don't think undocumented immigrants crossing the border with Mexico into the U.S. is a national emergency. Overall, Texans are split on their support for Trump's wall. 48% support building a wall, and 48% oppose it. Well, I'm sorry, but Texas is already feeling the effects of the illegal immigration. Crime is up. Disease is up. I question this poll. I really, really do. And I know that they're pulling out all the stops to sell the open border idea and the New World Order, where everybody goes from country to country to country. And they're going to say anything. They're going to, any lie, any hoax that they need to do to get what they want, they're going to do it. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. Apparently, during a congressional hearing, Democrat Mary Gay Scanlon compared the U.S. Border Patrol officers to Nazis. Now, that is way over the line, and I think she owes the Border Patrol officers an apology. They'll never get it. But to call them Nazis, I mean, these people are defending our borders. They're not invading other countries. They're defending our borders. To call them Nazis is wholly inappropriate. And again, recapping something that one of our callers talked about, Air Force General Terrence O'Shaughnessy, who is the NORTHCOM commander right now, is saying there is no military threat on the southern U.S. border. He's saying immigration is not a military threat. There's no military threat. Well, then we don't have to get involved. Again, we're about to make military threats of Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. Now, I have here the text of the oath that all military officers must take. I, your name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God. So this Air Force general basically should be court-martialed. It's not up to him to decide which of Trump's orders he's going to obey or not. All righty. Story coming on out from MondoWeiss.net. Apparently the Jewish Broadcasting Service held a roundtable on whether the Democratic Party is turning against Israel. And apparently much of the discussion was about the 3 women elected last year to Congress. Rashida Tlaib, I still don't know how to pronounce that, of Detroit, Ilhan Omar of Minneapolis, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of Bronx, Queens. And both Tlaib, would somebody call in and tell me how to pronounce that name? And Omar are Muslims who have endorsed the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And, of course, that's been declared an anti-Semitic movement. But then these 2 commentators at this roundtable, Thane Rosenbaum and Jonathan Mark, suggested that maybe Arab Muslims as a whole do not belong in America. In other words, they want to bring the same apartheid they're practicing in Israel to the United States. Just kick them on out. Over in Hungary, their citizens are all going to receive a mass letter from Prime Minister Orban detailing the European Union's pro-immigration efforts and how Hungary plans to oppose them. And, of course, over in the EU, politicians like Angela Merkel, they're rejecting Hungary's campaign to basically say, we want to go back to being Hungary. I think we're seeing the push for the New World Order break into public view. That's what this is going on. The fight to keep Britain tangled up with the European Union. The fight to keep all borders open, even though it's causing tremendous social, medical, and cultural destruction, economic destruction. It's just that dream of a one planet, one slab of cement, one private central bank. And that's why the liberal Democrats in this country want to keep that southern border open, even though we may have wars being fought right near it in the very near future. Okay. Speaking of Brexit, the British government has released a report saying that a no-deal Brexit will lead to higher food prices, an extra £13 billion in costs for 240,000 businesses, and huge passport lines. This came out just as Theresa May insists that Britain can make a success out of crashing out without a deal. So she's trying to move ahead. And of course, the Remainers are still out there trying to fearmonger, saying, it's going to be higher fuel prices, it's going to be panic buying. But Theresa May is standing firm and saying we'll make a success of a no-deal Brexit. What's really interesting, and this article came out of The Spectator, it's actually the rest of Europe that is not prepared for a no-deal Brexit. And apparently they're rushing to make plans because it's starting to look like it may be real. Germany is hiring an extra 900 customs officials, and they're looking at 750,000 German jobs depend on free trade with Great Britain. France, they're hiring 740 customs officials and veterinary inspectors. They're very picky about animals that are allowed into their country. Over in the Netherlands, the Dutch government aims to boost its customs force by around 20%, hiring 928 extra staff. However, only 1/3 of those will be deployed by the end of March, and only 2/3 of the 143 additional staff for the Food and Consumer Product Safety Authority will be ready to help by Brexit Day. So they apparently really thought that Brexit was going to get called off, or it was going to be delayed again. All right, let's take a phone call. Mark in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, how you doing? Hey, look, I just heard what you said about that. Was that a senator or a congressman that said that about Arab Muslims don't belong in this country?
No, like it was two Israeli.
You know what? This really got my goat. First of all, that fool Ted Cruz, Israel has a right to the Golan Heights, and that should incorporate it. And that's, of course, because of Genie Energy. And that brings me back to what you just said about what this Israeli fool said. I take that very personal myself. As a guy, I told you before, I'm of Jewish ancestry. I don't practice religion, but still, they got me down. I think it's on my DD 214 on my birth certificate. So, if it hits the fan, they're going to come after me. So, what I'm saying is this: that those idiots don't understand. They could do that. They do that to Arab Muslims today. They go after Arab Muslims if they don't belong because they're really not the same religion and they have different values or whatever. Other nonsense. They can say tomorrow Jews are not Christians. They don't belong in this country either. And it can go on and on. I mean, it can go with other people too. I mean, this is disgusting. I
agree.
I have no use for this type of. This is bigger. That country is out of control. I tell you something. I don't have. I told you. I don't care what my ancestry is. I have no loyalty to Israel whatsoever. I think they've developed into a disgusting outlaw nation that's really not worthy of our respect anymore, and shouldn't even be. We shouldn't have to pay our tax dollars to support this gang. This is basically a criminal organization that's run as a country.
Yes, you could say the same thing about this country.
Yeah, but at least we still have a constitution that stands for the right things. If we can get rid of this crooked government, but Israel is it's a new nation. It's based on the fact that they think that God gave them the land. That's very questionable, of course.
Yes.
I'm beginning to believe the whole Abrahamic.
Actually, God gave it to me. Just to clear up the record here, God gave it to me. So you all owe me rent.
Want to sell me some land there? Maybe you can sell me the Red Sea. But it's ridiculous. I mean, I'm thinking back to that movie there. Was it what was it called? The Army of God, something like that, with the Crusaders, and when Saladin,
Kingdom of Heaven.
Right, the Kingdom of Heaven. I don't know if Saladin really did that, whether in truth, but if he did, he's prophetic. He says, "We'll burn it down if you try to take it by force," something like that. He says, "Well, maybe maybe we'd all be better off in the long run if you did that.
Yeah, I think that was Ridley Scott trying to make a comment about what was going on in the Middle East today. In fact, if you look at the closing title, where he makes a point of saying, we still, after all these years, all these centuries, have not been able to bring peace to the Middle East.
That's true. And Jerusalem is right in the middle of it.
Yeah, mostly because the big money is in keeping everybody riled up and at each other.
And a lot of people talk about the fanatical Muslims like the Wahhabis, but I'm telling you, there's groups within the Jews that are just as crazy, if not crazier.
That's why everybody's upset about Netanyahu bringing the Kahanists, into his new political party for the election. Because they don't want them. They absolutely do not want them.
Yeah. And you got these Chabad, something or another, Chabad Luboviches, and you got these
Shabbat. It's pronounced with a soft C. Shabbat.
And you got these. You got the Kabbalahs, which, by the way, is not all Jews joining the Kabbalah. That started with was made well known a few years ago with Madonna when she said Kabbalah, And then you got the Talmud, which is really, you talk about fanatical book. Well, I'm looking at. I can't read Hebrew or nothing, but I watch there's different things on the net about it. By YouTube. That's a thick book. I mean, that is crazy if you interpret it the way it's interpreted right.
I've never been able to find an English translation of the Talmud, so I've been looking for one. I figure if you're going to be talking about this stuff, it's best to read the instruction manual. So,
No More News. The guy in No More News seems to know a lot about it. And there's some other, and this guy is Pirelli News Live, and he's a, what do you call it again? A Christian Jew?
Christian Zionist. Christian Zionist, yeah.
Zionist. He makes it clear he's not a Zionist. He considers Zionists kind of like of the devil or something like that. And the same thing with the Talmud. He's a, what do you call it? He is a Christian. He's he's a Masonic Jew. He's a Jew.
Okay.
He was describing things in the Talmud. Him and his wife were describing things in the Talmud. That is an evil book. I mean,
yeah, my first wife shared a few things as well, and but if you go into any religious text, you can find some nasty stuff, even in the Christian Bible. The part about not allowing witches to live and how much pain and suffering that caused.
Maybe that would be another good thing with Tulsi Gabbard. At least she's not a part of the Abrahamic religion. She's a Hindu. Of course, the Hindus now are going at it with with that whole Pakistan thing.
All right, well, listen, Mark, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're finishing up on the subject of Brexit, and apparently there's this hardcore anti-Brexit campaign founded by Gina Miller. It's called Best for Britain, and apparently they're out there begging for corporate dark money to stop Brexit, to find a way to stop it. They're asking for £500,000 to be donated in the next 2 weeks. And they're basically pushing, saying that the British people have changed their mind, that they really do want to remain after all, and all we need is to find a way to have a new referendum and convince Parliament that the British people really don't want to leave after all. So the propaganda is flying. Meanwhile, Sky Data's yearly State of the Nation poll is showing nearly 90% of Britons feel the British leadership is spurning the public. Well, welcome to our world. What can I tell you? All right, we got some callers on the line here. White Rose calling from Colorado. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Michael. Thanks for taking my call. You can find the Talmud written in English on a website called abundanthope.net. Up at the top of the page, it says spiritual books. You click on that, and there's this whole slew of different spiritual books from all different...
that's going to be a good resource, not just for me, but for Claire, because she likes to study. All right, I'm going to bookmark that one.
There's a whole slew, abundanthope.net. Now, it's a little bit on the wacky side. Some of the stuff they come up with is a little bit off the wall. But, you read between the lines, you could find quite a bit of truth there.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that reference. I'm going to bookmark that and get on back to it.
Also, I would like to point out that also there you could find the works of Jacob Lorber, which I highly recommend reading. And please check out my website, thewhiterose.simplesite.com. All lowercases and no spaces. thewhiterose.simplesite.com.
Okay, well, that explains why you identified yourself. Okay. All right. I've got that bookmarked, and I will get back to that. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Dustin, I'm probably going to have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Well, before I talk about something serious like India, Pakistan, Mike, there was a show Left Behind. I think it was on Showtime or HBO. But every year they would read the names off on the TV of who went up to the pearly white sky. And one of them, the guys in the bar, and one of them was Gary Busey. And the guy's like, Gary Busey, are you effing kidding me, Gary Busey? I thought that was pretty funny because, the Pope would be left behind, but Gary Busey went up to the pearly white, So I thought that was it was supposed to be a serious show.
Yes.
But, but that's the kind of bizarre, I don't believe any of that. I'm a Catholic. I went to Catholic school, but I just don't believe any of that stuff.
That rapture stuff actually came out of a book called the Schofield Bible, and there's very little about it in the original biblical manuscripts. So that's kind of a modern embellishment, and it's just something people want to believe in, along with Scientology and UFOs and whatever else. Honest government.
He was a con man.
Say again?
Right? He was a con man. He was a con man, Schofield, right? Pretty much. He was a con man before he wrote that thing, where he just took the Bible, right, and he just added stuff to it, basically just to make money, right?
Yes.
That's what he did that for.
Yes.
But Mike, on India, Pakistan, I was watching the Indian news today, and there's a lot of fiery rhetoric coming from commentators from India, on the news, not the news people, but people that bring it on, and that's a scary thing, because they're saying Pakistan is not to be trustworthy, and this or that, and it's both sides, it's both sides, and it's I know they're fighting over this small piece. I don't know if Kashmir has any riches there in terms of oil or.
No, it's actually based on religion. It's based on, it's still an area. If you remember the history of India, and after it broke free from Britain, and it had to then break into Pakistan and India, because the Hindus and the Muslims, even with Gandhi's best efforts, they just weren't getting along with each other. They've got a historical enmity against each other, and that's what this is about, because both India and Pakistan claim the Kashmir area. It has a mixed population. India, I think, controls about 2/3 of it. Pakistan controls 1/3 of it. There's that line of control that they have sort of maintained for many years, where they stand on either side and sneer at it. But it appears to me that India is about ready to make a major play. Stay on the line, Dustin. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Dustin in New Jersey. And Dustin, what's next on your mind?
I wanted to still talk about India, Pakistan, where I also heard that India is moving to a forward base, some Su-30s and MiG-29s, and they're amassing troops in some areas. And then Pakistan's on alert for the next 48 hours.
Oh boy, this is going to get serious here. They do have wars with each other over Kashmir on a pretty much regular basis, and so far they haven't reached the nuclear stage. But it's definitely going to get very ugly there. And I think India just decided they're going to try and push and grab more of Kashmir and move that line of control. which would explain why they were so quick to try and blame Pakistan for this terror attack that basically the terrorists said, hey, we did it.
And remember, Modi's up for re-election.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going on, but I mean, it's nuts because, you know, each of them have, you know, 150 nuclear weapons. I mean,
something like that.
And I don't want to scare Peter from Los Angeles, but if they go full nuclear, you might want to have a bug out bag to leave Los Angeles. Because isn't that where the air current goes? Like they said, like Los Angeles would get hit by maybe fallout from.
Eventually there would be a belt of fallout from. I mean, if they used all their warheads, if it really went that far. You'd have a belt of radiation at that latitude, basically around the entire Earth at some point.
It's just such, like I said today, I just never heard such, you thought Trump, they hated Trump. There was just such hatred from these people against Pakistan, and probably the other way around, but I just never heard so much. And remember, they actually had a dog fight. So this was they had skirmishes before, like in '90 when Clinton was in, but I mean, not since '71 where has it reached this, this level. It's like, and then Mike, what you said, Gandhi, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's the way they think over there, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is, and it's a cultural thing. And as I mentioned earlier, the Muslims and the Hindus they have a hate for each other, and it goes back generations. So that's basically what's fueling this. Everybody's ready to go and do what they want to do.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, they do something, and then they got to respond. And remember, and then you got people behind you that are pushing you to respond for political reasons, right? Like over here, the same crap, right? I mean, they trying to push you, But all right, Mike, have a good rest of the show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. It's a very dangerous situation here, and I'm hoping that whatever's going to happen will be confined to Kashmir, because if India were to sort of blitzkrieg through Kashmir and then cross directly into Pakistan, then we're in a whole new world of risk in terms of somebody lighting off one of those nuclear-tipped missiles here. All righty. Over in Germany, the Cologne court has ruled that Germany's domestic spy agency is not allowed to classify the Alternative for Germany party as a case to investigate. Now, this represents a blow to the BFV intelligence agency, whose chief in January announced it would investigate the AfD to see whether the anti-immigrant party's politics breached constitutional safeguards against extremism. So again, we are seeing this grand push to create the New World Order, one world government, one planet, one slab of cement, one private central bank. It's breaking out into the open. We can all see it coming into view. And that, of course, is going to trigger people pushing back. We don't want to live under a global government. We have enough problems with large national governments. Global government's only going to be that much worse, especially when you consider there will be no alternative. That's one of the major problems with a global government. There'll be no alternative. There'll be no place that you can move to get away from the tyranny. And it's going to be a tyrannical government. It's going to have to stifle all freedom of speech just to survive the lies that it's telling to bring itself into existence. I think I'll dig out my old copy of THX 1138. Study up on that one here. Over in Santa Fe, Oklahoma, there at Santa Fe High School, there was a Trump-supporting student was wearing a Make America Great Again hat on his head and a Trump-themed flag as a cape, and another student basically ripped the hat off, saying, "Take that blank off," followed by the N-word. And that was a really ugly situation, and it turns out that the woman who assaulted this guy wearing the Make America Great Again hat was an illegal immigrant. She was in the country illegally, and she's been arrested by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. That's how bizarre this thing is. We have these illegal immigrants sneaking into this country and then attacking Americans who want this country to go back to being America. To me, that sounds like that's a military invasion. They're coming across the border and attacking our civilians. And this jerk up at CENTCOM says there's no military threat. All righty. If you're my age, you remember the name Sarah Jane Moore. She tried to assassinate President Gerald Ford back in 1975. She'd actually been an FBI informant, and she claimed she was trying to assassinate Ford to trigger a nationwide uprising. And she was sent to jail for 32 years. She was paroled in 2007. Unfortunately, she's back in jail again because she traveled to Israel and back without notifying federal authorities. That was a violation of her parole. So she's back in prison there. There is a new bill under consideration in California, and the bill claims to end alleged LGBT discrimination on sex offender lists. And it's like that database that the police department got rid of because there were too many people of color on it, and that just wasn't fair. So out in California, they're saying there are too many LGBT people being put on the sex offenders list, and nowhere near enough white heterosexual males who have loving wives. And why aren't they on the list as well? So this new bill will give judges the option to not order a sex offender to be put on the sex offenders list if they are LGBT. We have reached the point where political correctness is ripping our society apart. It really is. Over in Wisconsin, there's a high school, Tremper High School, and they're now under fire. They had an awards ceremony last year, which was attended by more than 100 people, to celebrate the achievements of the school's cheerleading squad. Apparently, they have a good one. They give out awards for most talented, most hardworking, and there were also a couple of lighthearted awards, the Big Booty and Big Booby awards. And there was also the String Bean Award given to the team's rookie for being so light and skinny. This has now come under fire from the PC crowd because it's body shaming. Oh my goodness, how could you do this? Well, look, here's the real world. Some people are born more attractive than others. Deal with it. Some people make bad life choices and they gain weight. Some people then make good life choices and they lose that weight. We're not all equal, and no amount of liberalism is going to make it happen. Each and every one of us is a unique individual, a product of what we inherit genetically, coupled with our life experiences. And I know the liberals don't believe that. They believe we're born with completely blank minds for them to play around with, but it's simply not true. Now here is a nice piece of Beck's from the New York Post. They're claiming that a team of psychologists in Britain's Staffordshire University and the University of Kent have issued a report that if you believe in conspiracy theories, you could turn into a criminal. Oh boy, if you're social behavior. So that's the next step. Anybody who doesn't believe the official story, oh, they're mentally ill. They are mentally ill. Got to send them away to the happy home for those who don't believe corporate media here. Huawei executives took advantage of this week's Mobile World Conference in Barcelona, which is one of the global telecom industry's biggest trade events, to mock U.S. allegations that Chinese telecom giant represents a security threat for the U.S.'s Western allies. when he correctly pointed out that U.S. law requires the same type of security cooperation for which Huawei is complicit. And he basically came out and said, look what Edward Snowden showed us all. The U.S. is requiring telecom companies to provide complete open access to all of our portable electronic devices. What hypocrites you are to say it's a problem if we are doing it. And of course, Huawei still says they're not doing it. That may actually be the problem. Huawei is not cooperating with U.S. directives for surveillance. Huawei's cell phones use encryption the NSA cannot backdoor. Okay, the CEO of PayPal has revealed that the multi-billion-dollar service partners with the leftist Southern Poverty Law Center to decide who should be blacklisted from their company. And they're using the label company corporate interests as their defense. Well, company corporate values means denying access to conservatives. And it's a big cause for concern for Christians because the Southern Poverty Law Center has taken a notably anti-Christian slant in recent years, targeting mainstream groups just because they hold biblical views about sexuality and life, meaning they're talking about the abortion people. And CBN News has reported extensively on the Southern Poverty Law Center's radical agenda to silence conservative Christian groups like D. James Kennedy Ministries and the Family Research Council. So censorship is here. It's coming on down. And apparently Tulsi Gabbard is now getting randomly blocked by Facebook. Somebody sent this video they'd captured off their device where they're looking at this Facebook post by Tulsi Gabbard. And they hit the button to share, and immediately it pops up and says content is no longer available. And then they get rid of the pop-up. The content is still there. It's just getting insane. Article coming on out from Investment Watch blog. Apparently, the Twitter purge, according to this article, the Twitter purge of conservatives is being spearheaded by Hillary Clinton and the left-wing media, because the left can only win elections by silencing their opponents. Democrats have found that when they're honest, they tend to drive away support rather than bring it closer. So basically, we've got, deep blue states. New York, Vermont, and Maryland have either passed or in the process of passing new abortion laws that are so permissive they fall just short of outright infanticide. And so people are getting on social media and saying, yeah, this is wrong. And according to this article, the left is now being led by Hillary Clinton. So yeah, it looks like she's going to try and step on in. Donald Trump needs to get her prosecuted under Title 18 because just one felony conviction makes her ineligible to be president. Just one. Donald, or whoever monitors this show on his behalf, just one felony conviction under Title 18. And you've already got James Comey on video admitting Hillary did commit these crimes. Okay. It is now official. February has been the coldest February in 83 years. The global climate pattern, which is cyclical, is now transitioning from a global warming cycle, which peaked in 1998, to a global cooling cycle, which we don't know when that one is going to hit the bottom. But we've seen the Earth cooling and cooling dramatically, especially during the past 3 years. Vancouver, where it rarely snows, has had 5 snowstorms this year. Snow fell in Las Vegas and Los Angeles. The snow cyclone that did that is now heading east. The world is not warming, despite what the corporate media is telling you. So apparently there is yet another strong Arctic outbreak to surge into the lower 48 states. So there's more to come. Punxsutawney Phil messed up. Story out of the American Thinker. John Kerry and other climate change alarmists refuse to risk an actual debate on their theory. And that's absolutely true. Kerry penned an op-ed in the Washington Post saying that President Trump should disband his climate denial panel. And again, they want to silence the opposition. And they won't debate. They keep saying, the science is settled, the science is settled. No, the science isn't settled. We have new data. We've had record-setting snow and ice, despite predictions back in 2000 that snowfalls were a thing of the past. That is new data. That opens up the debate again. But the attitude from the global warming people is, how dare Donald Trump employ scientists who disagree with the indoctrination, who disagree with the revealed wisdom of St. Al of the Gore. But I mean, there's all kinds of problems with this global warming thing. We'll be right back after these few words. Aloha America, welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today, and we're talking about how everybody who's pushing this human-caused global warming, they won't debate the issue. It's always the science is settled, and if you don't accept human-caused global warming, you're some kind of a whack job conspiracy theorist. And the reason they don't want to have a debate is because there are questions that could be asked to which they will not have an answer. And, for example, how come the ice is still in the Arctic after 150 years of exponential growth in fossil fuel use, since we were told it would be gone by now? Remember, Al Gore promised us the Arctic was going to be ice-free, and by the way, there's more ice up there now than there was back when he said that. Here's a good one. What caused the ice to melt after the Ice Age, since humans and fossil fuels couldn't have caused it? That always opens up the issue about solar radiation and the Earth's orbit, which the cultists don't want to talk about. They think that without humans, the climate would just be exactly the same. No, it isn't. It changes all the time. We have been warned that because humans and fossil fuels cause warming, we would have snowless winters. Why were the predictions so wrong? And why should we believe the doom and gloom about the future, given the previous predictions were 100% wrong? Now, scientific studies have shown that droughts were much longer in the past, prior to when humans and fossil fuels could have caused them. So why do the climate alarmists continually lie that humans are causing longer and more severe droughts? Well, because lying is what gets them what they want, which is their control over our lives and our money. And it's being presented as a done deal in the media. And it may be that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez actually does believe it, that we're all going to be dead in 12 years. She hasn't done her own homework. She's been indoctrinated with it her entire life. She's actually telling young people maybe they shouldn't have children because they're going to die horribly. And so they've come up with this ignorant Green New Deal that would destroy our economy, and it wouldn't work to change the climate one way or the other. $93 trillion. That's $600,000 per U.S. household. And by the way, the United States is responsible for only 17% of the world's pollution. That's a lot, and it would be nice if we could cut it back on down, but that's not what the Green New Deal is all about. It's about wealth distribution. By the way, the Democrat House Oversight Subcommittee scheduled a hearing on climate change, and interestingly enough, the Democrats didn't show up. The hearing was today. The panel was set to deliver testimonials and statements to advance the priorities of the Democratic congressional team selling the Green New Deal, except the Democrats didn't show up. Okay. There's the music. Time for me to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here, share it with everybody that you know. Conversation, paper, mail, maybe email. forget social media. They are just coming down hard on anything that doesn't fit their liberal utopian worldview. So please donate to Republic Broadcasting, Rented Lips. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. It's a tight month. It really is. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.